Hey, how's it going? It's Dan from modular.dev here, and we're going to talk about website forms today. So we're going to go over different inputs that you can put into website forms and all of that, which will be great. So as always, feel free to like this video and subscribe to the channel to get notified when we have new content, and ask any questions as we're going, and I'll try to answer them. If you have any questions afterwards, go ahead and ask in the comments below in the video. And I did want to point out that we're actually launching a Discord server, and the link is also in the description of the video and pinned into the comments. So if you want to join our Discord server and get help with whatever projects you're working on, or if you have any tips you want to offer others, or just talk about anything in web development in general, I would highly recommend that you join our Discord server. So as far as the video today, let's get into it. So whenever you're making a website, you might want to make a form kind of like this, where you have a contact form perhaps. You have some text elements here. You have name, email, phone, message, and a submit button. And eventually what it does is it goes out to the server and submits the form. So how do we do that? And well, first of all, how do we create the form? And then second of all, how do we get the values out of the form after we've submitted it? So those are two very different questions. Today we're going to cover over how do you make the form, what different form elements we can use, and next time we're going to cover how do you get the elements out of the form, which is going to require having a server, maybe using a C# or using PHP or JavaScript with Node.js or something like that. So we're going to cover ASP.NET next time, which is the C# version of a server-side language, and yeah, we'll get into that next time. But this time we're going to cover over the input elements. So I've linked in the description the input website, I guess, on the MDN web docs, and there you can find all the different input elements that there are. And we'll just go over them very briefly. There's a button, a checkbox, a color, which is kind of interesting. You don't see that too often. A date, so you can put in a date, you click the calendar, and a date time local, which is both a date and a time. Email, file, where you can choose a file. Hidden, which is basically nothing, but there is a use for that. Image, I guess, I never used that one. Month, number, password, obviously that's important for hiding passwords, so when you're typing in here you don't see the password. Radio, which is a radio button, you can only have one selected in that group. Range, a reset button. Search, submit, telephone, text, time, URL, and week. And not only that, but there are a couple other ones too in the related topics. You can find select, which is like a drop down. Let's see if they have an example here. Yep, here's a drop down. So that doesn't use the standard input tag, that uses a select tag. And let's see if there's any other text area. I use that one a lot. That's a multi-line text box, kind of like this. So feel free to look through these docs and use whatever input elements that you want for your project. For this one today, I'm just going to cover basically inputs, selects, checkboxes, that type of stuff. So the very, very, very basics. So let's get started. So I have a very blank HTML file here. And basically to put a text element on the page, or an input text element, we're going to do input, and that's going to be the same for most of what we do for inputs. So if you type and hit equals, with IntelliSense you should see a whole bunch of different possibilities. So if you don't put a type, you're going to have text as the default. So basically putting type equals text does nothing. We can leave it off. But if you want it there for clarity, you can put it there. Let's go ahead and I'll just put it there, and let's just see what happens. So normally with an HTML element, you're going to end it with end input, something like that. But in this case, that's not actually valid. This is one of the very few input elements or elements where you just end it within the first tag there. So that's that. Let's go ahead and run this and see what it looks like. Oh, I already have one running. Let's refresh. So I have a text box, and I can type whatever I want in there, and that's great. Nothing too special. Let's go ahead and change a couple things. What else do we have as options? Well, we have the placeholder, which can be very useful. For example, if you want them to type some kind of specific thing, you can put a placeholder here. I'll just put, well, yeah, we'll put something here, placeholder. And what you're going to notice is now if I refresh, we have a placeholder word in there that when you start typing, it goes away. And when you delete it, it comes back. So that can be very useful. For example, if we want to have a type of email on this and we refresh, it's going to look exactly the same. And that's because in the background, an email is just a text box. But the difference is you have to type a valid email in there. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So here we might want to do, example, or like your name at example.com, just so they kind of have an idea of what they're supposed to be typing in there. Maybe that would be a good idea for this. So that's what you can use placeholder for. I'm going to take it off for now. Yeah, that's the main thing. And then obviously you can do IDs and classes and all that great stuff. You can also set a default value. So maybe I want to, instead of leaving it blank, maybe I want to put something in there. And now if I refresh, we can see we have a starting value. So that can be very useful also. Let's go ahead and delete that. Now I showed you email, and you may be thinking, well, that's not any different than text. But in fact it is. On desktop, it's not much different because you have a full keyboard, but on mobile, it's going to show email-specific things like the @ sign and the .com. It's going to try to get you to put an email in there. And same thing with tel, which is phone, basically. It's short for telephone. On desktop, it's going to look the same as a text box, but on mobile, you're just going to get numbers popping up instead of all your entire keyboard. So it's definitely important to keep that in mind when you're putting the type here. Don't just always assume you should put text. Maybe try and get a little bit more specific and put email or tel, or here's another one, URL, if you want somebody to put in a website link. So definitely try to use those different types if you can. But obviously, if it's just a blank text box and they can put whatever they want in there, you're going to want to put text. How's it going, Coding Cyan? Nice to see you again. So yeah, that's the input type. Let's go ahead and do another one here, and we'll do date. And if we put an input type of date, you'll see we have a nice little thing here. We can put in, July 2nd to, I don't know, whatever. Or you could, use a calendar, which is great. So if you're expecting somebody to put yes, I do remember you, yep. If you are expecting a date, go ahead and use that type. So that's all well and good. Now, the question then is, what is the best practice for telling the user what they should put in? So what I like to do is label, and I'll explain why in a little bit. And I like to put, what they're trying to fill in here. So maybe it's their email address. And if I change this to an email now and I hit refresh, oops, it looks like I closed it down. Let me start it back up. So now we have email address and a text box, and now it's a little bit more clear what they're supposed to put in there. Now, when you start to really look at something like website accessibility, so if somebody is using a screen reader to use your website and they put their mouse in this field, You can actually try it yourself by downloading a Chrome extension called Chromevox. Otherwise, there's other ones too. But you put your mouse in there, or you tab into it, and it's going to say text field or something like that, and you're not going to know what to put in there. That's what this label is important for. But to get this label to associate with this input, you have to do one of two things. You have to either do this, where you give your input type some kind of an ID. So maybe I'll put an ID of email. And for the label now, I can do for email. And I just put the same ID there. So on the surface, nothing actually is going to be changing here. But if you do use Chromevox or some other thing to listen to the screen, like a screen reader, the changes will become apparent right away. You'll put your mouse in there and it will say email address. So definitely keep that in mind when you're developing forms. You want to be thinking about accessibility. In general, you want to be thinking about accessibility right away so you don't have to go back and redo your whole website. So the other way you can do it is you can actually put the input inside of the label, and then you don't have to put this ID here, and you don't have to put the for attribute on the label. It will just work. So however you want to do it is fine. Usually I do it this way, that way I don't have to put IDs all over the place, but either way works. Okay, so let's go ahead and just make kind of a dummy form here. I'm going to copy this, and we're going to put some things here. First name, and we'll make that a text, because they can put whatever they want in here. And we'll put text on this one. And actually, just to show you that it's the exact same thing, I'll just delete it, and because the type by default is text. Last name, email address, and maybe we'll put phone number here. Okay, and maybe we want to have a website here, and we'll put type of URL. Okay, so this could be a good form. Let's go ahead and refresh. And we kind of have some problems here. Let's go ahead and give all of these labels display block. If you remember display block, we talked about that kind of right away in this tutorial. And if you missed that lesson, basically what display block is going to do is it's going to make it go on its own line in a block kind of format. So let's go ahead and put label, and we can style it. We're styling the label this time, and we're going to put a display of block. Yeah, so I have a question. Will you make a form that will get data and make a platform with the data? So not in this video, we're just going to talk about creating the form. Next video, next week, we're going to talk about how to actually get the form data out of there and potentially do something with it. So that'll be next time. So let's just go ahead and refresh here. We got display block, and now they're all on their own line. So that's how you can do that. So the form is looking good, and basically what we want to do now is actually wrap this entire thing inside of a form tag. And a form is basically, think of it as something that you want to submit to somewhere. So maybe you have a username and password, that you have a login screen, that's inside of a form. You submit the form and you can log in. Same thing. Yeah. We'll not do it this time, but we'll do it next time, I think. Because that's actually very involved. We're not going to be able to read the form data in HTML. We're going to need some kind of a server using C# or PHP or something like that. So we'll do that next time. But yeah, we got a form here, and what you can do now with this form is, like I say, think of it as something you want to submit to somewhere else. So if you're on a login screen, or maybe you're on a contact page, all of these things, you're going to want to put all of them inside the form. And what you're going to want to do with the form is you're going to want to give it an action. And basically what that action means is, okay, where is this form going to submit to? And we're not going to actually fill that in this time because that's kind of the out of scope of this one. But we'll talk about that next time and how you actually can get the values from here. And let's see, what else? Oh, we need an actual submit button for our form. So you can do there's two ways to do a submit button. I prefer this way, button, and then give it a type of submit. And with button, actually submit is the default, which is a little bit odd to me. I would think actually it wouldn't be the default because whenever you hit enter, it will try to submit the form. But that's fine. And inside here, we're going to put the name or whatever we want inside this button. Let's go ahead and say submit form. All right, let's refresh. So now we actually have a full form. It's not going to submit anywhere yet because we haven't filled that in. But let's go ahead and put some of this stuff in. So, you know, maybe I'm Bob Smith, and maybe my email address. I'm going to type something wrong in the email address. And if you notice here, actually, when you submit the form, you get a little bit of error checking as well by default because we labeled this as a type of email. If we didn't have this as a type of email, you would not get that error check. You'd be able to put whatever you wanted in there and it'd be fine. So that's another reason why we want to put the correct type on here. Now, if you don't want that, I think there's a way to do it. Although I don't remember off the top of my head how to make it so you don't actually do the validation. I think maybe it's an attribute. Let's see. Oh yeah. Form no validate. Let's see. All right. So I don't want to get into it too much, but yeah, go ahead and you know, if you're interested in that, look into that. I know on the form itself, you can tell it not to validate. I don't know if you can do it per element on the form because there's this no validate thing here. So let me just show you what that means real quick, and then we'll move on. So if I have this email field, and you know I put something wrong in there, it's going to validate it. But I can put no validate on here. And now it won't validate it. So I thought maybe there was a way to do it per input, and maybe there is. I just don't know of it off the top of my head. But I usually like to keep this on because that's kind of why that's another built-in benefit of putting the right type on here. So yeah, that's very basic form submission. And again, we'll talk about next time how to get these values out of here. Here's a hint though, and you know, we're going to have to do this no matter what. We're going to have to put a name on this field. And the reason we do that is because the form will submit it, and it will submit it by its name. So we'll put it in for now, and next time we'll be able to take things out by their name. So I'm going to just put quick name fields on here. Last name equals email. Name equals phone, and name equals website. So we'll just put those in for now, and next time we'll actually use them. So that's the very basics, and let's go ahead and just talk about a couple more. So there's text area, which is multi-line text boxes, and so what you can do here is you can specify a certain number of rows. Obviously, a higher row is going to be taller. So if we put 8 rows, it's about that tall. If we put 3 rows, it's about that tall. However, usually I just leave this blank and I style it with CSS. So maybe for text area, I'm going to put all my text areas with a height of 100 pixels. And that's kind of the way I would recommend doing it. I probably wouldn't recommend using the rows because it's kind of, you're not quite sure what that really means. how tall will that be? It depends on the font size and all that other things. So I would recommend just putting a height on the text area, or a maximum height or something like that. Okay, another one is the select, which is kind of a drop down. And this one is a little bit more involved. So we have our select, but then we also have options inside the select. So maybe we have, let's think here. Maybe we have a label and it says favorite ice cream. And inside that label, we have this select box. All right, so maybe this first one here is vanilla. And then we have chocolate and strawberry. All right, let's go ahead and look and see what this looks like. There you go. We have a drop down. So these options are what actually show up in the drop down. So that's important to know. All right. And I think that is it for selects. No, that's not true. There's one more thing you can do with selects. You can do an opt group. So maybe you want to do plain ice creams. And maybe inside there we have, I don't think I'm doing that right. I think, let's see. It's been a little while since I've used an opt group, so let's see what they have. Opt group, here we go. All right, oh, it's label. Label is what you want to use there. So label, and then in here we'll put plain ice cream. And tab those over a little bit. And then we'll make another one for, I don't know, candy ice cream. So we have M&M. I guess it's more of like a blizzard or something like that. But yeah, M&M, I don't know, brownie, and Rolo. Sure. So let me go ahead and refresh this. We'll see we have groups now. You can't get the whole group, but you have them kind of grouped in there. So definitely you can use that for your selects also if you want to. And again, there's a lot more input types than what we've covered here. I kind of went over them a little bit quickly as well. So definitely look at that link that I put in the description and look at all your options and see if there's one that is what you need. I think lastly, I just want to talk about, you can still style these inputs just like anything else. So for example, if I want to style this first name input, I can put ID of first name, and in here I can do hashtag first name, and we can go ahead and put, I don't know, a padding of 10 pixels. And what that's going to do is that's going to make 10 pixels around all of our text. So this text box is going to be a lot bigger than the rest. And what you could do is maybe 10 pixels is a little bit much, but maybe 5. And also maybe what you could do is you could do first name colon focus. Now we haven't done much with these colon things, but if you do remember the links, we did talk about them a little bit. We had a visited, and then we had a active, stuff like that. Focus is what you can do when your mouse is inside the input. So let's go ahead and give this a box shadow of 0.05 pixels blue. And you don't need to know what that means, but basically we're going to give it a 5 pixel shadow around it when we're focused. And there you go. We can see we've got this nice little glow to this thing. So there's a lot of stuff you can do with styling these, but there's a lot of things you can't do too. For example, styling this select box here, I don't really have control necessarily over how some of these things look inside here. It's more this look right here that you can control. But I know they're working maybe to get some more control over how those look and feel. So just know that you can style these. And in fact, I think what I'm going to do is on all of my inputs, I'm going to give it a 5 pixel padding, and on all of my inputs, I'm going to give it this little blue ring. And I think I'll give it a margin bottom of 10 pixels, which we haven't. I don't know if we covered margins and paddings yet, but basically that's just spacing between things. So now we got some nice spacing in between these, each of them with a nice glow around them. However, we didn't put the glow on the text area, so that's why that one doesn't have it. So I know it's a lot of things that we went over, but that's forms in a nutshell. And next time we're going to cover how to actually get these values out of here, and basically how to work with them on the server side. So I think that's it. I guess there is one more that I would like to cover, and that is checkboxes and radio buttons. So we'll just do that real quick. Checkbox. So maybe put a subscribe checkbox, and basically what that is it looks like this, and they click it or not click it. Pretty simple, but that's what that is. And for radio buttons, it's a little bit trickier. So maybe let's go ahead and change. Let's go ahead and change this. Instead of a select, we'll make it a radio button group. So we have favorite ice cream, and we have type equal radio, and we'll give it. Let's see. We'll give it a value of vanilla. And the problem that you'll see is that let's go ahead and put a couple radio buttons here. I'm going to put this on the next line. Okay. So chocolate, whoops, and strawberry. So if we refresh now, we have 3 radio buttons, which is great. However, we can check all of them, which is not what we want. So what you can do is you can give them a name, and we have to give them a name anyway, if you recall, for when we submit them to the form. So let's go ahead and put favorite ice cream. Okay, now if we refresh, now you can only select one. The problem is you don't know which one that you have selected, right? There's no context around these. So what we need to do is, put some words after them. And it's not perfect, but hey, it gets the job done. The problem is also that we're clicking strawberry and it's still selecting this radio button. So what I like to do, just so you know, is I don't like to usually put the label for radio buttons outside here. I like to do a field set and a field set here. So field set you can read about as well, but it's basically just a group of fields. And legend, I think, is the correct term here. Okay, so now we have a field set with a legend, which goes kind of right here. And now for these, I put the label and then the input inside. Kind of like that. And I'll show you why I do that in just a second. Whoops. All right, let's go ahead and refresh this. We have a radio button group, and now when we select the checkbox, or we can select the words, which is actually very important because a lot of times people might think they can check the words, and if you don't allow them to, they might get upset, or they might have trouble with clicking the radio buttons because they're so small. So in general, I like to put the labels and the input or the radio buttons inside the labels, which is going to allow you to click the words. So this is how I like to do radio button groups. It's kind of complicated, so feel free to ask any questions on that. But yeah, that's checkboxes, radio buttons, text boxes, select boxes. We covered a lot of things today, so definitely ask if you have any questions on any of them. But the description to the MDN article should hopefully be a good place to start. And if you have questions, or if you want to talk about it, like I said in the beginning, feel free to check out our Discord. We just created it, so not a whole lot of people there yet, but we're looking to grow that pretty quickly. So hopefully that you can join that. So hopefully you learned something today, and thanks for watching.